Well, hi there. Welcome to this edition of Just Getting Started. Thrilled to bring you a man that I think is so intriguing. His name is Nick Mohammed. He plays Nate, the great Shelley, on Ted Lasso. I don't know about you, but I needed Ted Lasso to get through COVID. I needed something hopeful and inspirational, just like this podcast, Just Getting Started. So let's go talk to Nick and find out how he just got started. So as promised here on Just Getting Started, Nick Mohammed joins me, and I am so happy to have you for myriad reasons. First of all, I feel like Ted Lasso came along in a very dark time in the world, and we needed a reason to smile. And I feel like, Nick, you gave us that with your character, Nate the Great Shelley. And I would love to know what you were thinking, first of all, before we go back in time and talk about your previous life as a seismologist, a mathematician, a magician, everything you can think of. I'd love to hear your thoughts when you first saw this character on the pages. Did it jump out at you? Did you have any idea how transcending Nate could possibly be?
Oh goodness. I guess the answer is no, really. I mean, I was drawn to the part and the script because you could immediately tell that it was quality writing. There was an amazing creative team behind it, and but at that point, to be fair, I certainly when I went into audition for it, I didn't know exactly where the character was going to go, and it was only sort of later on, and part of the reason why I then decided to do it was because they said, "Oh, just so you know, this is our kind of trajectory for this character," and then once we started filming season one, Jason was very open about where it was going to go in terms of, the heel turn in season two and him kind of going to the dark side, as it were. So I was, I could immediately tell that this was going to be a really fun show, and I loved that thematically it was optimistic, and it felt really refreshing in that respect. And that was before we knew that there was going to be a pandemic when it was going to go out, of course. But it felt like it was slightly bucking the trend of those more sort of cynical, snarky comedies. I felt that the kind of comedy was a little bit saturated with those at the time, and so yeah, this felt great. But no, I don't think anyone could have anticipated how much it would connect to an audience, and obviously we're beyond thrilled that it has. And I think it's just testament to the writers. Really, they're just so great, and they managed to write such kind of deep often when you're playing a part of an ensemble, you don't get the opportunity to for the character to go on a journey, and for it to have kind of layers of depth and stuff. But they've managed that with, I think, every single character in the show, not just Nate. And so yeah, it's a true, a real privilege to get to play that part.
I think the reason why Americans resonate so much with this as well is it's that typical American out of place, right?
Yeah.
And there's that feeling, and let's face it, because Americans love an English accent. They are just riveted. And I'm not just saying just me. I think that what's so fun for it as well is that it's not your typical London show. It's not taking place in London. It doesn't feel repetitive. It feels like a typical American out of water. And because to us, football is such a huge deal, and by that I mean the NFL, to see a character like Jason Sudeikis, like Ted Lasso, going and taking that real Americana personality, becoming the fish out of water, I think is just something that it felt warm and fuzzy and a little bit different and strange at the same time. So what was it like for you getting to get to know this American crew, and obviously Jason Sudeikis being the star of it as Ted Lasso? What kind of adjustment was that for you in terms of growing up in the UK, watching the shows that you watch, and then getting a healthy dose of this?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was absolutely brought up on watching both British and American sitcoms. To be fair, I never thought that. Scrubs was one of my favorite shows when I was growing up as well. So knowing that this was a Bill Lawrence show, I was like, oh man, this is a guy who kind of created Scrubs. But those, well, both Bill and Jason and that whole creative team, they really lead by example, and they're such positive people. I remember even on that very first day when we were doing the read through of the pilot, And it was quite a big deal because, it was, well, Apple were, still relatively new in terms of, not as a company, obviously, but in terms of entering the kind of TV space. And everyone was really excited about the show, but it still felt like a big deal. And I remember, the recording of the pilot was of the read through was being kind of beamed over to LA and New York and various places, and so we were all quite nervous. And both Bill and Jason just said, "I'm sure that you, particularly British people, will have heard all these kind of horror stories of pilot read throughs where people literally get kind of cut." Instantly, or there's a meeting immediately after the read through and suddenly they're recasting and things like that, and they were just so nice. They said, "We just want to know that's not how we operate. You guys are the people that we want to do this, and you're all here to stay, so just enjoy it." And I remember from that moment onwards, we all just felt so, I just so valued and appreciated. I mean, it's a very kind of Ted experience in that it was, we experienced something and we kind of came away feeling very positive and empowered, actually, as individuals, as actors. And so, yeah, we just sort of hit the ground running, and it was just, just a joy to be a part of. I can't really fault it, because there was a sense of being overwhelmed. Um, but from day one, we were just all told to, no, no, we're all on the same page here. Let's just all have a good time. And it's just such a great set. There's no turkeys. Jason says that a lot, but there's no turkeys.
What was it about Nate that was so appealing to you?
I liked that I liked his trajectory in terms of, it's quite a familiar one, the underdog who sort of does good, particularly in season one. I really liked that because, I quite like playing the sort of shy kind of introverted guy, but I liked the fact that he had his moments to shine. And uh, and I liked the way that, over the course of season one, his confidence grew and grew. And there were some just fun scenes as part of that, like the roast scene in season one, where he kind of roasts all the players. That was a really fun one. And just knowing that, by the end of it, he was going to get promoted, I felt like it was, particularly when I was reading it, it felt like, well, this is definitely a character that the audience are going to kind of latch onto and really root for, because, he kind of comes from obscurity and no one has ever really given him the time of day. But Ted has come over and has just embraced him like immediately, and has, run with it, and that has instilled this newfound confidence in Nate. And of course, spoiler alert, it obviously does then turn sour in season two, but that in itself is really interesting, and certainly not what I think people were expecting. And I think possibly because audiences had rooted for Nate in season one and had really kind of felt his journey as kind of going from an underdog to a kind of a hero and getting promoted by the end. I think it made that fall from grace an even sort of harsher one and a steeper one when he did sort of turn on Ted by the end of season two.
Yeah, I don't think many people saw that coming at all. I mean, if you follow at all the James Campbell, the myth building, obviously the hero is normally on that ascent, but it was a good twist because there was a whole lot of happy in Ted Lasso, and to have that twist happen kind of came out of left field.
Yeah, I think the only not valid criticism, but whenever I've heard anyone sort of be critical of the show, it's where they've said, oh, well, there's just not enough conflict, or not, that it is, it pushes that kind of optimism and the hope at the expense of conflict. But I just can, you watch season two and you're like, well, it's all conflict. It's, there's so much conflict in there, and I also think it made it feel a lot more realistic. The idea that someone, I'm talking about Nate, but who has been at the receiving end of bullies and has experienced that, often, not exclusively, but often they do then become a bully, because when they're given a bit of power and, you know or promoted, or kind of they go to the next sort of level of leadership or whatever that is, because that's all that they have known, so they just project that onto the next sort of underling, and then they kind of, that's how they sort of see their place in the world, which is obviously very sad, but I think there's a truth to it.
Were you ever bullied as a child?
No, no, I don't think I was, but I definitely felt there were definitely times when I felt like I was sort of different and an outsider, and I wasn't sporty at all. And I did. I know you said in your intro, but I did. I did. I was quite a geeky kid. I loved science, and I did magic as a kid a lot. And I did it professionally then for a while before acting. But being the kind of kid who does magic tricks, and you'll hear a lot of magicians say that often that is a defense mechanism for not being bullied, because it's a way to avoid the bullies, because you can just be like, oh, just pick a card, just pick a card, and then that's how you sort of get out of those sort of playground situations. And but so no, I wasn't bullied, but I could certainly uh associate with some of the kind of feelings that Nate had at the start of his sort of season one journey.
Let's talk about how you just got started, because I feel like your story is so fantastic. It wasn't as though you grew up wishing that you could be on stage. So many actors knew from Jump Street that they wanted to be on stage, and you didn't. You were heading to Cambridge, but you chose the University of Durham. And first of all, I want to know why, because to us, it just seems so crazy to choose a school over Cambridge or Oxford. I mean, you think of Cambridge or Oxford as Harvard or Yale. So what made you choose there instead?
Well, I think it was just partly because, to be frank, the course that they offered at Durham was just more suited towards what I was interested in. And I think there was an element of being a little bit intimidated by the prospects of Oxford and Cambridge. I did then go to Cambridge to do postgraduate studies, so I feel like ultimately I was really lucky, because I got to kind of experience sort of undergraduate life at Durham, which felt less pressured, but was still kind of a good place, a good university. And the sciences department was really good, and I really enjoyed studying there. And then to kind of then get to go to kind of Cambridge, but with that kind of under my belt, sort of felt like I just felt very grateful that I'd sort of just had that slightly sort of stepping stone to it. I think I would have been a bit rabbit in headlights if I'd have gone sort of straight from high school to Oxford or Cambridge. But I do, yeah. I loved both. And my wife and we got married in Cambridge, and we visited again like last summer. We love it. I mean, it's a beautiful place. It's really nice.
So then how does one make the jump from doctorate degrees in seismology
Oh,
and
interacting.
interest in magic and interest in math? What was the first inkling that you had that there was a love to be had there?
Well, I think I don't, because I was into magic as a kid, I definitely always enjoyed performing. I mean, not that I ever thought that I could make a career out of performing, and it's still very different to acting and writing and so on. But actually, it was probably once I'd then left Durham and went to Cambridge to start doing this PhD. I got involved with Cambridge Footlights, which is the comedy sort of sketch group, which has sort of produced, I mean, it's kind of got this kind of crazy alumni base of like Stephen Fry and Emma Thompson and Mitchell and Webb and Mel and Sue. They're just some kind of great people who've sort of been through that discipline. But really, all it was an opportunity to write and perform comedy every couple of weeks. And as part of that, I got to kind of go to the Edinburgh Festival, and it was sort of during there that I was like, I really love this, and I think I love it enough to quit my PhD, as much as that was kind of probably a crazy idea at the time. And there were absolutely no guarantees. And for a good while, particularly then when I moved to London, I couldn't afford to live as a struggling actor or struggling comedian. I was working at a bank for a while in the day, but then doing a lot of gigs and so on in the evening. So it was quite a long process in terms of before I could sort of fully say I'm a professional actor and that's all I do now for a living. I've only really been able to sort of say that for the last sort of 5 to 10 years. But it was definitely at Cambridge when I think it kind of gave me the sort of the taste for it, and possibly even the ambition to think that it was possible to achieve it.
I can't imagine what your mom and dad would have said. You know what, mom and dad, I'm going to quit my doctorate and become an actor. That's every parent's dream, I think.
They were very supportive. And I think it's fair to say that my mum in particular was quite apprehensive at the choice, but she was like, okay, well, give yourself. I remember they were like, well, just give yourself maybe a time limit, like if it doesn't work out, maybe maybe reassess. But okay, if you want to kind of go and I think that was quite wise. And I did. I think I can't remember if I gave myself a time limit or not. But I remember thinking, okay, that does sound sensible. Whether I don't know whether I stuck to the time frame or not. I'm not sure now.
So, what was the first job that you had that you thought, I can follow this trajectory. I can do this professionally.
Uh, Gosh. In terms of the very first acting job that I did, I knew that I loved it and wanted to do it for a living, and that was a comedy drama called Billy Goat on the BBC. It was part of like a four-part where they'd adapted these fairy tales and made them into kind of modern sort of stories. And I remember I got to go to Ireland for 3 4 weeks, and I got to play one of the Billy Goats basically. Even though the story was that they weren't Billy Goats, they were like in a boy band. It was quite a strange story, but it was. I just loved it, and it was the first time I'd kind of been away, like from home, and acted, and it felt quite glitzy, even though we were just it was still quite a standard job. There wasn't anything hugely glamorous about it necessarily, but I loved it, and I think technically at that point I was like, I'm going to stop working at the bank and I'm just going to kind of go for it. But again, there was no guarantees, and I would say it wasn't really until sort of intelligence and Ted Lasso in particular that I feel like I've sort of learned kind of a little bit more about what acting is and how uh, to kind of obviously I still feel like I'm learning tons and sort of honing my craft, and particularly on Ted. I know I said before that you don't always get an opportunity in the UK, sort of doing British sitcoms, where if you're part of an ensemble, you don't really get an opportunity for kind of character development necessarily, because often a series lasts 6 half hours, whereas with Ted, there's sort of 12. I mean, I don't know how long episode 12 was of season two. I think it was like 50 minutes or something. Suddenly now with the streaming platforms, you get uh, a lot more airtime, and so they just allow these kind of minor characters to breathe a lot more within the writing and in the scripts and so on. And I feel like you know just that has allowed me to kind of grow as an actor, because you're just able to sort of slightly pace your performance, and it can become a lot more nuanced. Whereas often, not all the time, but often in previous work, there's a lot more sense of, okay, we've got to rush, and if this isn't sort of, absolutely on point storytelling, it might get cut. So don't slow down, just kind of keep on point, and we're really going to focus on the main characters. We're not necessarily going to have time to flesh out the minor parts. And so, yeah, again, I just owe a huge debt to Ted Lasso for that as well.
Why do you think Nate has resonated so much?
I think. Well, I guess like I was saying before, in that I think everyone can associate with an underdog story. I think everyone likes to believe that uh, the underdog can sort of see through to sort of being good and kind of getting on the top of their game. Uh, and I think also with Nate, particularly in season one, he really epitomized the kind of the core message within Ted, which is that there's this great guy, Ted Lasso, who through his interactions with other people makes them better, makes them better people, um, makes them see the positive in themselves, empowers them. And that Nate journey in season one absolutely embodies that. This is a guy who's the kit man. No one else gives him the time of day. Ted comes along, empowers him bit by bit, and suddenly he's promoted and he's a coach, and he's suddenly commanding the respect of the players and the fans, the supporters of AFC Richmond. So I think it kind of captured the show in a nutshell, did that story. And again, which is why it hurt all the more when there's that fall from grace in season two.
So let's talk about how people interact with you now. Are they running up to you, calling you Nate? Are they how has your life changed since you took on this character?
It has changed, and it's always a privilege. Like honestly, I can't. It's never a chore. Like we're maybe there's a honeymoon period at the moment. I don't know, but it's so nice, and maybe because of when it came out with the pandemic and everything, people come up to me every day, and they want to talk about it, and it is such a joy. It's so nice that it's connected with people, and of course, there's a particularly with season two, there's an element of tongue in cheek of people like me. Nate, what are you doing? I can't believe it. I can't believe you've turned on Ted and you've left the club and. But that's really fun because it just because it's a fiction, the story is fiction, so it's kind of great that people are that invested in it as if it's almost real life. But people are nothing but polite, and it's just nice that this show has you know resonated with so many people. And when people, oh hello, and people getting in touch on Twitter and stuff, it's really made a difference, I think, to some people's lives. That show came at, obviously it wasn't planned, but came at a time when I think people were really responsive to such a positive message because a lot of people were in lockdown, a lot of people were really suffering as a result of the pandemic, and it was just a bit of a ray of sunshine, I think, for a lot of people, and we're so grateful for that.
I think you should be grateful that you're not in America, because I think people are so much more aggressive here that I'm afraid they would come up to you and be like, what is your problem? How could you do that to Ted? I think there's a difference between the American personality. And by the way, there's 3 dogs here. So you will hear barking at some point because I'm totally unprofessional. But I think that there's that differentiation between an American personality and a British person. And obviously the reserve that there is in the UK, proper respect for people. I'm afraid that you might, if you're walking down the street of New York, have some people accost you.
Well, I remember when I was in America when the season finale of season 2 went out, and I was in Albuquerque, and we went to the balloon festival there, and I was only I sort of just arrived, so I was quite jet lagged and stuff, and I kind of couldn't believe that people were at that point kind of already sort of going, oh Nate, oh hang on, what have you done? I can't believe what I've just seen you betray Nate, and now you're Hitler, betray Ted. What are you doing? It like there was an element of like reality and the fiction sort of blurring a little bit, but I enjoy it. I never find it a chore. But yeah, maybe if I kind of kept to myself after that, but like maybe if I'd have been accosted too many times, I would have found it a bit more difficult.
We were saying this before with my producer, Lou Pellegrino. We were saying oftentimes with actors, people can't divorce them from the character that they play. Whereas broadcasters, they know us. So because they see us all the time, we don't play anyone other than ourselves. And there's that differentiation that sometimes people have trouble with. And because you were so nasty in the end of the season, I think that might be part of that failure to disconnect.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. I think I was I remember just before the finale dropped, Jason texting me just to check in, which is so sweet, and also a very Ted thing to do, I think, because the previous episode had been when Nate makes that really deeply inappropriate move on Keeley, and left a really sort of, and the episode kind of goes out, I think, on him spitting in the mirror again, maybe, I can't remember now. And it just left a really sour taste, and I think everyone was like, I don't think there's really any going back for Nate from this. And obviously they still had the season finale to come and that showdown between him and Ted, but I was a little apprehensive by that point, thinking, what are people gonna think? But it's all part of the sort of the joy of the storytelling, and they've done such a great job as writers to tell these intricate, layered stories, and the fact that they can make people care so much is undoubtedly a good thing. They have done their job right, by doing that.
How much of Jason Sudeikis is Ted Lasso and vice versa?
100%, just 100% both ways, I would say. He's so great. He's so nice. He's so kind. He's so gracious. He's humble. That kind of, be curious, not judgmental. It's just Jason all over. He's just so interested and wants to make things better and so passionate about it. The show wouldn't work if he wasn't really, if he couldn't embody that. It's like I was saying, same with Bill Lawrence. They just lead by a really good example, and that just filters down. It filters down to everyone. There was a really nice moments. I remember at the very end of season 2, and we couldn't really do like a wrap party or anything because I think it was still quite sort of lockdown. We couldn't do like an indoor thing, so we just all met on Richmond Green, and I live in Richmond, and so we were all kind of having drinks, and my wife wandered down, and at that point my wife hadn't seen the show yet, and and she said a really really nice thing, which shouldn't be the case, but it's true that and everyone was there from cast, crew, supporting artists, everyone, writers, just anyone who can make it was sort of there, and everyone sort of mucking in and having a good time. And my wife said it's sort of like the first time that and she's not part of the industry. She's a brilliant teacher, music teacher, and but she said I had no idea who was like a lead actor in that show, who was who had done catering on the show, and not to belittle catering, but what I mean is there was no sort of sense of hierarchy. I think sometimes there are so many stories where you kind of get quite often a toxic hierarchy within production and jobs, and the people who are at the top behave like they're at the top, and that has a trickle down effect as well, and it's not very pleasant. Whereas Ted Lasso, I can honestly say it's a job where everyone is made to feel so valued, and so part of everyone just wants to do a really good job because they know that the show has such a positive message and has resonated with people. It's a joy to be a part of, and I think I felt that really sort of spoke volumes in terms of how it is run, that show. It's everyone feels it's such an ensemble effort, and which is good because that the show is about teamwork and optimism and hope and working together and producing something good as a result of it.
Before I ask you what your favorite episode is, I would be a complete and total idiot if I didn't say to you, "You're kidding me. You live in Richmond? Did you live in Richmond before the show?"
Yeah, we've lived here for 7 years. Yeah, what a fluke. I mean, I can sometimes walk to work. I mean, it's crazy, absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it'll never happen again, so I'm enjoying it.
I mean, that never happened.
No, never
No.
happens. Never ever happens. Never,
So
never.
how much of it how much how much of what we see is actually Richmond? Like, is that
Uh,
your local pub?
yeah, yeah, we go there all the time. I mean, the Prince's Head, which is the pub. I mean, the interior of the pub is a set, but the exterior of the pub is a real pub on Richmond Green. And yeah, I mean, me and Brendan, who plays Coach Beard. So Brendan arrived about a month or so ago. So we've already had like drinks there. Jason is living in Richmond as well while we're filming, and I think Hannah might live here at some point because she likes it. So I mean, suddenly there's like a real kind of community, Ted Lasso actors who are suddenly living in Richmond. But yeah, I've lived here. Becca and we've lived here for 7 years, so we love it. Yeah.
I would imagine that the regulars who live there are now suddenly looking at you like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. What are you doing here? And what's this? That has to be so surreal.
It is quite a strange one, and the staff at the pub are so nice because we've kind of now gone there quite a lot, so they're kind of quite in tune with it, and they've even put like a little sort of shrine to Ted Lasso. They've got like pictures up and things on the wall, but it's genuinely just a really nice pub. I mean, even prior to Ted Lasso, I had drinks there, and it's a great pub. It's a really nice one. So yeah.
Genius. Who makes you laugh the most on the set?
Well, that's a good question. I don't have tons of interactions with her, but Hannah makes me laugh a lot. As in, we set each other off laughing quite a lot. Jeremy, who plays Higgins, he knows how to. He occasionally just makes little noises, which I always find funny. And then often, particularly in season 1, being caught in the firing line between Jason and Brendan, because there was so many scenes where there was Coach Beard, Nate, and Ted on the sidelines. So we'd have a lot of just sort of times when the camera's just facing us, and they would just improvise stuff because they're so in tune with each other because they've improvised together for so long. I would just get caught in the firing line and often crack up because they would change the ending of every scene. So yeah, but everyone has their moments. Phil, who plays Jamie, he really makes me laugh. It's such a great part, and he does it so well. Collar, who plays Isaac, makes me laugh. There's a great bunch, such a great bunch.
It's so interesting because you have so many trained actors on the set.
Yeah,
Obviously, in Phil and Hannah, you've got people who have become huge names in theater. And here
Yeah.
they are doing spot on comedy. What have you learned from them?
Gosh, it's that's absolutely on point because you realize, I never went to drama school and haven't done tons of theatre, done bits and pieces, but mostly comedy. Um, and you do realize, you see everyone's different sort of uh, processes in terms of acting, and I don't know, just I always I love how many questions that we all kind of get to ask on set. We never feel rushed on set, which is a real luxury, to be honest. We're very lucky for that. Uh, Everyone's always sort of just wanting to know motivation, particularly when we're filming out of order, and if we know that the particular scene we might be doing is going to be important for something that we're going to be filming, in a month's time or something. We'll ask a lot of questions, and we're allowed to input a lot as well. Like we're always uh, made to feel that there's a script, but the script isn't sacrosanct. If we want to put it into our own voice, or if we have an idea for a better tag to end on, or we want to ad lib a particular phrase, they'll always allow for that. We'll always get what's down on the page as well, because they've spent so many hours agonizing over that. But they're so open for suggestions. So what have I learned specifically about acting? To not be afraid to take my time, I guess. Hannah and Phil, when they're doing kind of proper kind of character performances, you realize that you kind of can't rush a lot of that. And as a cast and a crew, they're very supportive of you wanting to sort of take your time and not feel rushed, which is great.
What's been your favorite episode so far?
Oh goodness. Oh, there's so many. I think I really like episode 7 of season 1, which is called "Make Rebecca Great Again." I think, which is it's the one where
Mhm.
Nate does the roast, which is just a really fun scene to do. But also, it's when Rebecca does the "Let It Go" karaoke, which is obviously kind of phenomenal. But more importantly, it's also where Ted has his panic attack, and I think it felt like it was one of those episodes. And again, it's testament to the writers, where they're able to walk this real fine line of delivering on the laughs and delivering on the emotion of certain scenes. And I think often in comedy drama, one can sort of sometimes end up undermining the other, or you sort of sacrifice a bit of the comedy so that you can be more dramatic, and you can sacrifice some of the drama so that you can be more lighthearted with the gags and stuff. But that was an episode that managed to walk this tightrope. I think it's also when the first time that Roy and Keeley kiss as well. So there's so much going on in that episode. I loved that one. I thought it was terrific. And in season 2, I thought the funeral episode was phenomenal. Oh gosh, so many. I mean, I thought the season finale was really great. I mean, like, as in, it felt really dramatic, and yeah, I thought the opening. I love the Christmas episode. I thought that was so fun and so nice. Um, oh, so many. I loved the episode in Wembley, episode 8. Oh, forgive me, I can't remember the name of the brilliant actor. I think he's called Kieran. I can't remember his surname. Who plays Jamie's dad? And it's where they have that standoff in the locker room after the match, and does he punch Jamie, or Jamie headbutts him? I can't remember which way around it is now. But and then Roy goes to comfort Jamie, and it's so powerful, and it's all about toxic masculinity and so many things. But it was so well acted, and so well, it was so well written as well. I remember thinking, oh God, that's a great episode, and just to film at Wembley as well was really fun.
And then as we talk about the end, because I love how whenever people interview actors, they always think that they're going to get some incredible scoop, like, you're going to tell me what's going to happen, right? For season 3. And you're sitting here like, no, you moron, I'm not. Watch the show. But it leaves on such a great ending, and that we feel so invested, and also so angry at the same time. With Nate, how much of that was your input? I read in your, you wrote on, I believe it was your Instagram, that the hair color change was deliberate.
Yeah, yeah, that was all deliberate, and that was more just sort of through discussions with makeup designer Nikki Austin, that we wanted to sort of chart his downfall physically in some way, and we found that interesting. Um, so, I mean, it's one of those things because we knew that we had such a long season and 12 episodes worth of time to sort of track this downfall of Nate in season 2. It was a kind of an ongoing conversation as they were writing scripts about, okay, because you never want to peak too early, and it's like I was saying before, we knew that scene between, in fact, I think actually I said to Rich before, excuse me, but that scene between Ted and Nate is the only scene between Ted and Nate in the entire season, which is sort of incredible, actually. It's the only scene between just those two
You're
people.
kidding. I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah, but it's really important that it's the only scene as well. And I remember knowing that from very early on because it's to effectively show that kind of all that kind of pent up aggression and tension that Nate is feeling. He's not getting to have it out with Ted. He feels abandoned by Ted. And again, it's sort of allowing the audience just sort of almost subconsciously to realize that he hasn't had his Ted time. Ted has had his own issues and his own sort of demons to kind of work on, and he sort of he hasn't he sort of has to a degree abandoned Nate. And yeah, it was just about sort of charting that downfall, and it was just a very open conversation. They would, as the scripts were coming in, they would sort of send me stuff, but it was always quite to the wire. I remember I only got that final when Nate lays into Ted. I think that speech was only sent like a week before, but they said that that's it. It's probably not going to change. They were kind of, I think this is it. So learn this, because I was really adamant that I was like, it's going to be a really difficult scene. So I kind of wanted to have as much time on it as possible in advance to prepare and things. But and only because I'm just not that well trained an actor, so I knew I'd need as much sort of time to sort of focus as possible. But yeah, they're so great and so understanding, and as I say, so generous about sort of sharing the reasons behind why they've written something in a certain way, and the logic behind what they want Nate to feel and so on. They're really good with their time at explaining it all.
Geico asks, how would you love a chance to save some money on insurance? Of course you would. After all, who doesn't love a great deal, right? And when it comes to great rates on insurance for all the things in your life, Geico can help. Like with insurance for your car, your truck, motorcycle, boat, and RV. Even help with homeowners, condo, or renters coverage. You could save even more with a special discount when you bundle your coverages. Plus, add the easy-to-use Geico mobile app, available 24-hour roadside assistance, and more. And choosing to switch to Geico becomes an easy choice. Switch today and see all the ways you could save with great rates and discounts. It's easy. Simply go to geico.com to get a rate quote, or contact your local agent and get started seeing how much you could save. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Nick. I know that I did. I needed Ted Lasso to get me through COVID. I needed something hopeful and something inspirational, and that's just what that show did for me. And talking to Nick, talking to somebody who really wasn't sure he could crack being an actor full-time, that this is one of his biggest gigs yet here on Ted Lasso, I think it gives us all hope that we can all just get started all over again. Thanks for taking in this episode. Coming up next, Stephen A. Smith. He'll sit with me and talk about his illustrious career. How did he get started? How did one of the most prolific announcers in sports broadcasting get his start? You'll find out on the next episode of Just Getting Started. Talk to you then.